G'day, folks, and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Oliver Brandt, and in this episode, I'm joined by Angelo Valdivia,
Hey, Paisanos.
Michael Goncalves,
Hey team.
and Luke Henderson.
Hello there.
We've got a great episode lined up for you, all about a huge double Nintendo live stream, a new Echoes of Wisdom trailer with some interesting new features, and a discussion about the recent Nintendo Live in Sydney, and a bunch more. But first, let's talk about Croc. So this is something that is quite exciting, especially for people on Facebook, apparently, who went absolutely nuts for this news. So Argonaut Games is back, been refounded, and they announced that there is a remaster coming for Croc Legend of the Gobbos, which was the first Croc game. And yeah, it's coming out on current consoles and PC, and it'll be the first time it's on a Nintendo home console. But yeah, there's no real date for it. We don't really know what the features are. Just that a remaster for Croc is coming. So yeah, how do we all feel about this? Because Croc is obviously a game that is more closely aligned with PlayStation, but it kind of was a Yoshi game first, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were the Game Boy ones, but honestly, the only reason it surprised me is because this is what the 90s retro platform that's being reborn in some form, like with Gex and Tomba and all these other ones. So I'm very happy to see more games come back. But I never played this originally, but it's just like it surprised me, and not so much as the game, but the company coming back as well. Like it's a different company, but the same name. Like everything just seems to be coming back all at once. It was a shock.
I can't tell if people... Obviously, people love these games, and I can't tell if people just continually want like a 90s platformer to play, or if it's just pure nostalgia.
It's pure nostalgia.
You know what I mean?
It's pure nostalgia.
It's absolute
Okay.
nostalgia.
Well, there you go. And the question has been answered. Let's carry on.
I mean, Ukulele was built by people who made 90s platformers, and it did well, but it didn't like set the world on fire. So
Yeah.
Yeah, like Croc. I remember in primary school, like Croc was kind of cool, but it was like one of many at the time, right? This Rayman, was it 2, 3, whichever one went 3D, the 3D platformer. Tonic Trouble. Where's that guy? When's he coming back?
he's a PlayStation character, so probably never coming back.
Is he a PlayStation character? I had it on PC.
Hang on,
time.
no, Tonic Trouble is Ubisoft. Hang on, I'm confused now.
Oh, so never
There was an
coming back.
N64 platformer by Insomniac. I'm gonna Google
Yeah,
it
so
while we
like
talk.
all of these 3D mascot platformers, like we've been getting like a sprinkling of them over the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 years or so. So this is just the next one on the list, and I'm guessing people were just browsing the trademark section of Amazon.com, just saw the Argonaut was up for grabs, and they're like, add to cart, let's do it.
Yeah, I mean that has, I don't know, the past few years it definitely has been much more of a thing. Like somebody bought the rights to Glover, and now we're getting a Glover sequel as well, and a remaster for that and a re-release.
So where's Chameleon Twist as well? Like actual, like slightly more recognizable 3D platformers.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of these are just like caught up in like the weirdest of like rights issues, where like
Yeah, that's what it
3.5 companies own it, and like 2 of them may or may not be out of business.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that like Atari or like companies that were owned by Atari like published something and they own the rights to it, but like nobody knows where those rights are anymore because Atari has like folded and been reborn like so many times, and its assets have been sold off and rebought, and yeah.
There's a game from Activision, something Sins in the title, but it's one of those ones where nobody knows who owns it, even though Activision say they own it, but they can't do anything with it because for whatever reason. So it happens more often than people think, especially when it's a license. Like it's a comic book based game, like the Turok games. The Turok games are based on comics, but the comic license is different to the game license. So yeah.
I feel like that's the most like peak corporate capitalism thing, where something has been sold and like died so many times, everyone's like, well, and nobody knows who owns it anymore. It's just gone into the ether.
I think
what
that's
the
definitely
fuck?
I think that's definitely peak 90s capitalism, because everyone was just in a gold rush to just make as much just crap as possible, and then no one just retained rights for anything when all these companies folded. Whereas these days, peak capitalism is like everything is absolutely locked under like lock and
True.
key. Like no one can access anything anymore because they know exactly who has the rights to those.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. A few weeks back, I was talking to somebody who worked on the game Glass Rose, which I've talked about in the past. An absolutely unhinged psychological horror point-and-click game from Sing, which people will know is the company behind all sorts of things, but Little King Story, Another Code, Hotel Dusk, that kind of thing. Anyway, I was talking to somebody who worked on that, and like that game was like co-developed by Sing and Capcom, and then published by Capcom everywhere. But like nobody has any documentation to say that they own it. Apparently, like Capcom does not think that they own it, but like Sing is a dead company, and nobody knows what happened to all of the assets after that. And the company that the Sing founder founded after Sing went under doesn't have the rights to it either. So like that's just a dead game. Like it's never coming back.
All right, nobody cares about Glass Rose. It's fine.
No, nobody does care about Glass Rose except me. Like I'm the only person on the planet who actually gives a shit about it. But yeah, it's a weird situation.
Slight side note, it's even funnier like thinking about ukulele just returning to ukulele now. I don't even know if I can't remember if we talked about this on the podcast or not, but like that game's getting like a remaster / re-release. Game only came out 7 years ago like relatively modern or current gen or whatever. I guess it was last gen, right? But it almost debuted alongside the Switch.
Yeah.
Anyway, just wanted to point out that was weird.
Yeah, ukulele.
Yeah.
What they're calling it.
That's right.
But yeah, so Croc, that's coming back at some point in the future. We don't know when or what it's going to look like. But
Remake Tonic Trouble, you cowards.
I looked it up. That's a Ubisoft game.
Oh, there we go. We know exactly who's responsible then. Michael, can you unsubscribe from them so we can get their address?
We're not going to explain that. That's going to be completely contextless.
Yeah. I mean, Ubisoft, I don't know. Ubisoft is not. I don't know. It's not like it's impossible for it to come back. But.
Well, the company itself? Because I don't think it's possible for them to come back.
You say that
released Star Wars Outlaws, and it's quite fun.
It took them, what, 4 years? It's going to take them 6 years to remake The Sands of Time twice. So
oh, that's not coming out anytime soon.
No.
That's going to be like a decade long, if not longer.
Yeah.
They just need to let their small teams like actually do stuff. Like we had fucking what was that game? Immortals Phoenix Rising. That was fantastic. That was a small team. And fucking Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. That was really, really good. Just like their small teams just do incredible work. I feel like if they just focused on those small teams just a little bit more.
The biggest problem is they have like 9 studios working on one game.
Yeah.
And it's like there's just so much that goes wrong when you have so many people trying to lead a project globally. It never works. So when one studio works on something, you tend to have a better product at the end. And Ubisoft, don't.
I don't know if it's just the people I hang out with, but I don't hear people ever talk about Ubisoft games.
Ubisoft before its own controversies and stuff, like 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, basically starting with like all the troubles with like Yves Guillemot and stuff and all that kind of jazz. It was definitely like up there as one of my favorite developers /
For
publishers.
sure. Yeah, 100%.
So I was completely all over what they were doing, but then like it's been in a bit of a tailspin for a while now, and Capcom has far superseded them in the meantime as my favorite.
Yeah, Capcom has just been killing it the last few years.
Like
Like something about like the switch to the RE engine has just like massively boosted their output.
But
both
also
in terms
just
of
like
quantity and quality, yeah.
their strategy with their own IP as well, like re-releasing like very much cherry picking which ones to make at very strategic points as well. Just really seem to be hitting lately, which is great.
And they also seem to be doing a ton of really great like remasters or re-releases of their old games. The packages are really compelling and actually good, which is great for a change, to be honest.
I mean, they're localizing things from like 20 years ago that were never localized as well, like with the new Ace Attorney collection.
Totally. Ace Attorney, the Miles 2. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Can't wait to play that, by the way. Very excited.
Yeah. I mean, it's on my list, but it's a busy time of year.
Totally.
But yeah. We will move on to the next topic now because there's a lot to get through. So a week ago, 2 weeks, it was just after we recorded our last episode because that's how these things work. There was a giant double Nintendo Direct situation. So there was a Nintendo Direct partner showcase and an Indie World presentation back to back, which had went for 40 minutes, but it felt like it went for 3 hours because there was so much stuff in it. God, there was so much stuff.
They did so many of those, and now check this out, and it's 18 games in a row.
Yeah, and one of the games it was announced, and that was a Trails in the Sky remake that had not been announced before. It was just oh yeah, here's a sizzle reel. By the way, this widely beloved game is just getting a full remake, and it's oh okay, where did that come from? Anyway, we'll quickly go over the headlines here, and then we'll discuss it as a show in general. So the opening thing was Tetris Forever, which is the next entry in the Goldmaster series from Digital Eclipse. It has 15 Tetris games in it. Only 9 have been announced so far, but it's I think the NES version, a whole bunch of others.
Yeah.
The Suikoden 1 and 2 HD remaster finally got a release date, which is a shock because they've just been not giving that a release date for such a long time. There was a Castlevania Dominus collection, which had the 3 Nintendo DS Castlevania games, and one of the arcade games, which I forget the name of, and a weird remake of that. Haunted Castle, yeah. So that and a weird remake of that as well, which I don't think anybody was expecting. There is a My Sims Cozy Bundle, which has the original My Sims and My Sims Kingdom, both of which are coming to Switch in one package, and the remake of the first Yakuza game, Yakuza Kiwami, is coming to the Switch, which is funny because Sega said it was never going to happen because the Switch is a console for children. So, yeah. Yakuza Kiwami.
Money.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
yeah, the
it is a
Yakuza
console for children, but it's also owned by a lot of adults, so...
Yeah. So yeah, the Yakuza series has been on Nintendo before with the Wii U, which got a double pack of 1 and 2 in Japan. I think they could also be purchased separately, but it did not sell super well, and Sega was kind of salty about it for a while. But yeah, Yakuza Kiwami is on there. There were a bunch more things. I want to talk about Castlevania Dominus Collection because, goddamn, I think the DS games are honestly the best games in the Castlevania series, at least in terms of the more Metroidvania ones, rather than the classic Castlevania. And yeah, they did a really, really good job of porting these over.
What a great layout of the displays. Can I just say that? It's so nice.
Well, because that's the thing, right? Is there were 2 screen, when you played on the DS, there were 2 screens that you could switch between on the top screen. So the bottom screen is where you play all of the animation, all of the actual gameplay, and then the top screen had 1 screen that was a map, and then you could press a button to switch to the character screen. And the way that they've laid these out is just to have the gameplay screen on the left that's big, and then you have the map, and then underneath that is the character stat screen, and it's just really, really good. Some people were complaining that the gameplay box was shifted off to the side, but I think that's just I
mean, that's the only way to do it unless you want the other one to be the size of a bloody thumbnail.
Yeah, exactly.
or not visible. One of the two.
yeah.
I think as far as
yeah.
as solutions go to like DS titles being on like a single screen display, this is pretty much as best as you can get, really.
I
This
think
is
also
also
the format of the game lends itself to this layout as well, which is great.
Yeah.
Totally.
it's also the exact same way that Nintendo did it on the Wii U. When you're playing on the gamepad, they had the touch screen was the big screen, and then the little screen to the side was the top screen traditionally. So it's not an original thing, but it just works so well. And especially you can, if you want to, stack the images so they're one on top of the other, which is the traditional DS layout. I don't recommend doing that though, especially if you're playing in Switch handheld, because then it's a really, really, really small image. So.
That said, it is also on PC. I have.
Oh, it's on all of them.
I'm saying I have it on PC, and it does support if you have a vertical monitor, the 2-screen layout on that, so it doesn't automatically go 16:9. So it is quite good in that format, but also just good in the format that they presented it on in the Switch. And they've handled the touch input. It's actually really funny playing through the Nintendo DS games, because like the first game that came out was like really, really heavy on the touch screen, and the second game used it like a little bit less, but like still sometimes. And then you get to the third game and it's like, well, we're just not using the touch screen anymore, which I feel is like a really good
Evolution
trajectory
of the DS, really.
in general. But yeah, in the games that do use the touchscreen, it is a little bit clunky in that you have to use the right analog stick to move a little cursor around, and then like the right trigger to touch. But they have like some quality of life stuff there as well, where like one of them is like you have to draw symbols and stuff, which was in Dawn of Sorrow. Yeah, the sequel to Aria of Sorrow. And like that, they basically just did like a QuickTime event minigame where instead of like drawing it as you normally would, they assign buttons to the little things on the magic seal, so you just like press them in the right order, which is quite good. You can draw it though yourself. Like if you are using the touchscreen, you can do that.
I was very happy when I put it on handheld on Switch that it actually did support touch. I thought maybe because it was on every other platform it wouldn't do it, but it does. And that honestly, it surprised me that it was there, but I was very happy that it was there, because it made something much easier. The only thing is, Switch doesn't have the vertical mode. I'd have loved to have been able to flip the Switch 90 degrees and play them like it was basically a giant DS. That would have been so cool, but it doesn't have it on Switch.
I bought a flip grip years ago, and there are nowhere near enough games that use it. I would love more games that, even just like arcade shooters and things that came out, or were just new ones that were made that supported like Tate mode. It's so good. Oh.
Unfortunate. Anyway, what did we think of the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase? Were there any like standouts for anyone else? We've got the full list is in the article that's linked in our show notes.
I'm surprised that it has taken this long for My Sims to come back. As soon as I saw that trailer, I'm like, my god. Like, I completely forgot about My Sims.
My Sims.
Except for that, like, a couple of times we've mentioned it in Nintendo 20 Questions. But, like, yeah, when it came back, I'm like, oh my god, where has this been? As if EA just didn't keep, like, riding this thing into the ground. It was crazy to me. But it's back. Yeah, My Sims are back. If children these days know what those are.
Yeah. It was so weird for EA to finally get into Switch with this garbage, like, right at the end of Switch's life cycle. Like, they could have sold 1 billion of these if they brought it out like 5 years ago.
Yeah. But, it's coming now.
It's the EA way.
There's so much stuff like from the Wii era that like EA had a hand in that like they definitely could have been doing this earlier. But yeah, just decided not to.
But in terms of announcements, or at least like games that are coming out that they had footage of, like I'm every time I see Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, man, I just want that game so bad.
It looks so
good.
It
so bad. Yeah.
It plays very well also.
I love HD 2D remakes, and like these Dragon Quest games like look absolutely S tier.
Yeah. Something that surprised me was the new Rune Factory game, which looks completely different from Rune Factory games in the past. they've
Yeah,
just
they
overhauled
teased
the
it back
series.
in April or whatever it was, and they had a direct earlier. They showed off a little glimpse of the character design, and they said it'd
Yeah.
be different. But it's like, oh yeah, sure, Rune Factory, yeah, you're not going to change the formula too much. But this one, they've really changed things up, which is quite surprising.
Yeah. And yeah, I know that like a lot of people like not super into Rune Factory, and like that's fair. I'm not super into it either. I just generally don't like farming games. But yeah, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, the new one is looks phenomenal. I'm super on board with it.
Did you say how many bloody RPGs were in this direct? Because it was basically RPGs
There were a
only.
lot of RPGs. That's good. Tales of Graces F is like a really fantastic game. And people were asking for this for a while, and then there were leaks earlier in the year. So
It's also like the fourth Tales game that Bandai are remastering for modern platforms. So if you're a fan of the series, you're being treated very well there.
hopefully this one is handled a little bit better on Switch than the previous one, because that was kind of bad. But yeah, people are like super keen for that one. I mean, they showed off Civ 7, which, you know, we talked about at length previously. And yeah, just generally kind of good. There's the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, which has a bunch of stuff that people are...
I want to bring these up. These look great as well. Don't know if I'll be picking them up on Switch, but we were also just talking before about like how great Capcom has been with bringing back their titles and putting them in collections and stuff. And like, yeah, this just seems to be just another really good one. Seems like bar Digital Eclipse, like Capcom, and to an extent Konami have just been firing on all cylinders with re-releasing collections of their IP.
I remember making a joke a few episodes back now about, I think it was the Ace Attorney. I'm like, it was the Mega Man one. I was like, how many collections can they possibly still do? And then they go and announce another one, and then I keep thinking, oh yeah, Capcom absolutely smashed the 90s with arcade games. There are so many arcade games.
They've just been around for so long, and they've made so many games.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing is like,
and their logo hasn't changed. I realized that earlier today. They're still running the same logo since like day one.
Yeah, honestly, like if you take the arcade games into account, they've released at least 2 games every single year since they released their first arcade game. So like they have a long history. And then like in the sort of like Game Boy Advance to sort of Wii era, they just massively doubled up on that too. Like they were pumping out like 6, 7, 10 games a year. So yeah, there's a lot that Capcom did. And it looks like we're getting all of them, pretty much.
I want the OG Resident Evil games to come out just so people can play them and realize how good they've got it with the remakes. Because even the GameCube remakes of those games, one at least, that looks beautiful, but they still very much played the same as the original release. So the 2 and 3 remakes so vastly superior to the original releases. I just want them to bring out Collection back. Or Dino Crisis. I'm happy with Dino Crisis as well.
We're definitely going to get a remake of Resident Evil 1 at some point. So
for sure. Yeah. I'm amazed it hasn't happened already, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to erase the remake of 1 eventually.
Yeah. Honestly, like I think with that, it's probably likely to come sooner rather than later, because I get the feeling that like Capcom just does not want to grapple with Resident Evil 5 at all. And fair enough.
Well, we'll see. I mean, people have been really clamoring for a Code Veronica remake, so...
I mean, that would be incredible.
There's enough spin-off games in that series that they could do a heap before they even have to worry about 5. So
Survivor.
Resident Evil 0, the one that people forget about.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was the I mean, obviously Yakuza Kiwami, very good game too. Basically a remake / reimagining of the first Yakuza game that also was like a retcon, because there was a lot of stuff in the original Yakuza that was a bit problematic and shit. So they kind of fixed that up, and also like retroactively kind of tied it into their own other games as well. So yeah, It's
And
fun. I mean,
I
it's
have to point this out because I love pointing it out. But the studio that makes the Yakuza, or Like a Dragon as it's now known, series is Ryuga. I can never pronounce it. But they're the people that make the Monkey Ball games. So
oh, Angelo, we've lost you. We've got no audio.
technical
Yeah.
difficulties. Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep right.
Yeah. So the Yakuza games are made by the same people that make the Monkey Ball games, and it's just like the biggest dichotomy of like opposites you could get. So, but yeah, it's I'm happy that they're bringing it across because every time I get a chance to play them, I enjoy it. But sometimes they're just so convoluted that I don't want to spend 3 hours sitting on a couch trying to understand what the hell's going on. So, playing it on Switch might be good.
But yeah, so we also got, as I mentioned, Trails in the Sky remake, which is very exciting for people like that. What's curious about that is that like there's like it just came out of nowhere. There's no publisher attached to it in the West at all. And according to a story that came out like literally yesterday, the company that made it didn't even know it was going to be in the Direct. They had no idea. They didn't have like pages set up for the remake or anything like that. They just like Nintendo asked them if they had anything they wanted to chuck in the Direct. They sent off a trailer and then just didn't check the email inbox after that to see if it was going to be included. So they just like did not have any idea. And then like it gets announced and obviously their socials are like flooded with like, oh cool, where's the website, where can I pre-order? And it's like, well, we had no idea, didn't prepare for this at all. So
because it was lumped into the montage, and that was the weird thing is that Activision, Nintendo put out the montage video separately, which they traditionally don't do. Montages usually just get ignored. So one montage had Legend of Heroes Trials in the Sky first, Star Wars Hunters Season 3, Stalker, Legends of the Zone trilogy. Like that was a bit of a wild card, like the fact they announced the 3 original Stalker games were coming to Switch. Worms Armageddon is also getting remade for modern platforms, and it comes with the Game Boy version of that game of all things. And then the second group, Disney Epic Mickey was in there, Tales of the Shire was shown off again. That still looks weird, like looks rough on Switch. Like if you're gonna play it, I probably wouldn't pick it up on Switch unless you had no choice. Just Dance, another Just Dance. Funko Fusion looks a bit better this time than its original Switch footage. So I think
It does not.
compared to what it
it's
originally
not running
looked
at like 6 frames a second anymore. So
again, I still probably wouldn't pick this up on Switch. The fact they keep delaying it, and now in the Direct they didn't put a release date on it, even though like 2 weeks before then it had a release
Don't
date.
pick it up. Period. just
it's
EA
actually kind of
Sports
fun.
FC.
Like I've played an early version
Nope.
of Funko Fusion.
Stop
and, like,
talking
as
about
much
it.
as
It's done.
as much as I hate Funko, like it is just a Lego game, but with Funko instead of Lego.
I mean, the team that are making it is made up of mostly Traveler's Tales guys, so
yeah,
I'd be very surprised if it didn't feel like a Lego game.
but
and
it's
then
also Funko, so
yeah. But we also got a trailer for Lego Horizons as well in there, which is still surreal. So, but yeah, it was.
I was
it was-
just about to bring up the Worms Armageddon because Michael, I feel like we've talked about this before.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
tell me.
obviously it's great it's coming out on other platforms, but like there's been some controversy in the community around like the version they're getting and some of the features not coming to PC, and it seems to be this rift of people being like, no, it's great, we're not getting that garbage, like keep the original game. And there's some people that'll be like, I don't even want like some of the updated like stuff. And I'm like, whatever. Like I said a million times, they made the perfect Armageddon game in the 90s, and just that's it.
Every time they try and make a different one, people go, "No, thank you, Armageddon, please."
Pretty much. But it's cool to see it getting released on other systems. It's nice. And then finally acknowledging that is they can't do better. Like it's done.
Yeah, they kind of just gave up. It's like, yeah, okay, this is the only Worms game that anybody cares about, so here it is.
It's also another Digital Eclipse are doing this one as well, which
Yeah,
they're really showing how they're the masters of breathing new life into retro games. So
yeah. Angelo, what do you think of Worms Armageddon? Do you have
Dude, I
sound
love
now?
Worms Armageddon. Worms was my absolute jam in the late 90s. I remember sleepover parties where we'd play Worms 2 even. Yeah, I love Armageddon.
Still have a traumatic experience going to pick the game up I can't remember what the game store was. Some like shitty game store that doesn't exist anymore. One of the 84 game companies in Australia that went defunct in the 90s and early 2000s. I rang up the store and asked if they had a copy on PC, and they're like, yes. And I went to the store to pick it up. And I would have been, when did it come out? 98, I think?
99.
99? No, so it would have been either 14 or 15, one of the two. And I went to go pick it up, and my usual, just like awkward as fuck self, I'm like, hey, I'm here to pick this up. And like, oh no, we don't have that. Like, we're sold out. And I'm like, oh, okay. And started to walk away. And they're like, oh no, we're just joking. And I'm like, don't do this to me, man. This is serious fucking business.
But like in your defense though, I hate when people do that. They just think they're so hilarious.
It's awful. I think it's also worse. If you're doing it to another adult, that's fine. Don't do it to a child, especially not a teenager, where their sarcasm, like part of their brain, is completely off and just doesn't work at all. Oh, it was the worst. Either way, I still have that box. It's the best.
Especially the nerdy teenagers as well. Like everyone knows that they're like the easy ones to sort of make fun of anyway. Like, yeah.
So you work at a fucking game store. Fuck off.
Yeah, I know, right? I hate when people do that in general. Like it's a very old person thing to do, right? Like you're like, oh, can I get this? And they're like, no, you can't. I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh no, we're just joking. I'm like, where was the joke? Like, what was that?
Totally.
Yeah.
I hate when if you do that.
I had that happen
you're a
at
terrible
my
person.
fucking local fruit barn because they keep some of their like high-end garlic stuff at like behind the counter, and I was like, oh, can I get like a jar of that garlic paste? I'm like, nope. And I was like, what the fuck like, this is a business. Like, this isn't like comedy hour down at the fucking yacht club. Like, yeah.
Just follow it up and just say, oh, but do you want my money?
I mean, they ask you to pay and you'd be like, no.
Yeah, that's it. Just be like, oh, no.
Anyway, there was a second half of the presentation, which was the Indie World presentation. Now, before we get into this, Silksong was not in it, so if that's all you're here for, just leave. It was never going to be in there. It doesn't exist. Game's never coming out. But there was a bunch of cool stuff in the Indie Showcase. A lot of cool stuff. So yeah, Balatro, a whole bunch of like crossover stuff. With like The Witcher. Who would have thought?
I would have thought, because The Witcher is, and I'll say this, The Witcher's a whore of crossovers. If you have anything you want The Witcher to be in, they will give you The Witcher, because they will take your money and not give a shit.
Was it in Astrobot, Luke?
No, because it's not a PlayStation. It's not affiliated with PlayStation. So,
actually, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure that there's a cameo, but I don't think there is.
No, there isn't.
I think there's one that looks a lot like it, but isn't. Anyway, so yeah, there's The Witcher, Dave the Diver, Among Us, and Vampire Survivors. All of them are in Balatro name, and it was just a free update, just for massive crossover things.
And they said more still to come. So
yeah, they're doing more.
But also, like, there was a buried update that it's coming to mobile, like at the end of the month.
Yeah. Arcade.
Well, no, it's also there's a purchasable version on Google Play Store and iOS.
Nothing makes me more happy than like an indie game being like turbo successful and selling a trillion copies, and then the makers being like, oh, you want more, eh? And just like going ham with the money that they get, just going ballistic. It's awesome.
Dave the Diver did that. Dave the Diver was like, nobody really cared if it did really well, and then
barring Witcher obviously, but all those games did that. Among Us did that. Vampire Survivors did that. They just went absolutely bonkers. Great.
Yeah. There's been a long tradition of like indie games specifically signing in other indie games to bring their iconic characters in, which is great. It's fantastic. It means that like they don't have to deal with bureaucracy of like 5 different levels of corporate sign-offs and things like that. They can literally just go to their small indie publisher and be like, hey, can we collab?
Yeah. But then like some, obviously The Witcher is here, but like there are other indie games that have like somehow managed to get like quite large companies to agree to stuff. Like Dead Cells had the Castlevania DLC.
That's what makes a little sense thematically. The one that always surprises me is Shovel Knight is in For Honor. from
Yeah.
another Ubisoft game where it's samurai, pirates, and knights, whatever it is these days. And then all of a sudden you get a Shovel Knight look in it. It's like, what the hell? So
Well, Dave the Diver had Godzilla in it. I mean, granted,
Yeah.
Dave the Diver is actually deceptively like made by a larger company
Yeah.
to some extent.
Yeah.
But yeah, has Godzilla in it for whatever reason.
It's wild, but it's always good to see. We got a release date for Neva. I don't know how they say it. It's a
I
new
say
game from the
Neva.
creators from Gris, which is good. I didn't super love Gris, but that's a me problem and not a problem with the game.
I love the visual style this studio has. I think the games look phenomenal. Like, especially like when I got the OLED Switch, I put Gris on it, and you stop that game at any point, and it just looked incredible. So I'm keen for this one, mostly because I just liked Gris. So
This game called Peglin, which was a shadow drop out now, which I have played on mobile previously and is now on Switch, and I think coming to other things as well.
It definitely tickles my lizard brain. Is it good? Because I'm like,
It's very good.
Peggle
very,
and
very
a
good.
game in one.
It's like an RPG, but the combat is Peggle. So
It's
you're
a
just
puzzle
like-
quest, but Peggle.
Do you remember OG Peggle?
Peggle
RIP.
rules. Then they made Peggle
So
2,
good.
and they're like, well, EA.
But like, it's such a absolute paradigm shift, right, between the first game and the second game. The first one was just such an absolute indie hit, somewhat indie. And then microtransactions and the whole like season pass kind of mindset just kicked in.
Yeah,
And it just
same with
really,
Plants vs Zombies. Exactly the same scenario.
Yeah,
it wasn't Peggle made by PopCap before EA bought them, and Peggle 2 was
Yeah.
after.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. There's a new coffee talk game set in Japan, which looks really lovely. There was like new DLC for Sea of Stars. There's a Shrek DLC for Power Wash Simulator.
Quick
Hell
question:
yeah.
Did any of you guys ever play Sea of Stars?
I
my
played like
ever expanding playlist.
I played like 4 or 5 hours of it. I haven't like really dug into it too much.
Yeah. See, I finished it early this year, but like after about halfway, it kind of feels like a slog. You really have to use a lot of have a lot of willpower, in my experience, to just really finish that game. And
So really like a 90s RPG. They nailed it, is what you're saying.
I mean, kind of, but like even this, I don't know.
Well, like when you think about it, right? Like it was inspired very, very heavily by Chrono Trigger, and like it starts falling off at around the point that you would be rolling the credits on Chrono Trigger, is what I've heard. Again, I've only played 4 or 5 hours of it, but Chrono Trigger is only
Maybe.
like 10-ish hours long.
I feel like Sea of Stars, again, in my experience, Sea of Stars just kind of had the same problem that Eastwood did, where like the art style is phenomenal. Like everything about the juice of the game was just really good. But then as you go on, like this game just really overstays its welcome, or at least it just feels like the story just kind of gets a bit nonsensical, and there isn't like a consistent thread to keep you interested in what's going on. You're just kind of like, oh, what is happening here? Whereas at least with a JRPG, there are like frequent twists and turns, and someone betrays you, and etc. And then there's all this like massive Greek tragedy kind of stuff going on. But Sea of Stars, I don't know. Anyway, just wanted to get on my soapbox for a bit. Peglin looks amazing, by the way. I completely missed this game and I'm watching the trailer for it now, and oh my god.
It
Wow.
looks sick, right?
Yeah.
Literally why I put it in the notes, because I'm like, this game needs to be. People need to know about this game.
Adding to my wish list.
For sure. Probably the biggest announcement, and I think it was a shadow drop as well, was Pizza Tower,
Yeah.
which is on Switch. Which, yeah, really, really cool that is on Switch, because a couple, I think it was the last indie showcase, there was a game that was like shown off there
Anton
that we were
Blast.
like, wow, Anton Blast, that looks a lot like Pizza Tower, and we're like, wow, would be nice if Pizza Tower was on Switch, and now it is. So
Well,
I
makes
think it was
sense.
more
It's a
the fact that-
It's a Wario-ass Wario platformer game, so it should be on Switch.
I think
Sure.
it's
It's
just
just
when
like it's one of those games that just is really well, not simple, but like the graphically simple. So like it just shines on Switch. So I'm just always surprised that they never did it. But yeah, I guess they were working on it.
yeah. There was also something that really interested me. Just scrolling through this now. Date everything, which is really weird. Where you just get to date everything.
It's so strange, but so great at the same time.
it's a Team 17 game, so it's not surprising that it's weird. but it's like
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to be that weird.
It gave
Yeah,
real
it's like,
boyfriend
oh.
dungeon energy.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I saw it and I was like, "Is this the boyfriend dungeon devs?"
Yeah.
But no, it's not. It's yeah, but it looks interesting, and it's like, oh yeah, light bulb, you can date that. You know, lounge, you can date that. The concept of the game itself, you can date that. Like, it's just wild.
I remember the
But
time when Boyfriend Dungeon came out, and like I was like, "What is this game?" Blah, blah, blah. And then I just remember specifically Michael just being like, "Oh, you've never wanted to bang a sword," except he didn't use the word "bang." He used something a little more gratuitous. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's what this game is."
um,
So every time I see
I
this
mean, I
game
stand
now,
by
I just
that
think of that.
statement. How have you never wanted to fuck a sword?
Good
yeah,
one.
one of the things that I thought was really interesting was a game called Morsels, which is in the list, and it looks phenomenal. Like, it has such a gorgeous art style, and just some of the weirdest monster and character designs I've ever seen. But it looked really good, and the trailer's super weird and fun. But it's an Annapurna interactive game, which means it's going to be really good because Annapurna does not miss. So yeah, definitely some.
It looks.
Keep an eye
It
on.
definitely looks like a weirdo. I don't know, like an arcade / 90s PC hybrid adventure game. Like, it really gives that vibe, and yeah, I'm totally into it. It looks gross as all hell, but in a kind of
Yeah.
charming way.
It's like a Garbage Pail Kids kind of thing, right? Like where
Sure. Yeah. Odd
where it's like
mods,
gross,
yeah.
but like kind of still kind of endearing in a way.
It's a mix of like, I'm trying to remember the name of the game. It's like a claymation adventure game that came out by the guys who made Machinarium, I think. A mix between that and the art style of Nidhogg. It's just like they just merged them together. It's really cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so really good indie world overall, I think.
I think in
And
the
like
last
just
couple of years, sorry, Ollie, I think in the last couple of years, especially, there's just been like a real big push for very artistically driven games, whether they're like, gross out ones like this, or something like sort of, I don't know, highly illustrative like what's it called, Never or Gris or something like that. And like, it's fantastic, right? Like, a lot of these developers are getting to like their hands on much more sophisticated tools, or at least the space is becoming just so much more innovative, where they're really experimenting with retro style, pixel art and things like that, and bringing it in with like more modern types of like lighting and effects and camera movement and things like that. And it's fantastic. It's so cool. Like, this is such a cool space to be looking around in these days. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up.
and like, the fact that I think all three of the platform holders now are like regularly showcasing these things. Nintendo does it obviously much more often than PlayStation and Xbox do. But yeah, the fact that there's a space for these smaller games that are being more experimental to hit the eyes of millions of people is really cool. But yeah, honestly, just keep doing that. I do think it's weird though, right? Like, doing this presentation back to back, like, because that's never happened before. Like, having a partner showcase and
I think
an
we had
indie
them
world,
like a week apart before.
we've
like,
had them a
one-
week apart before.
Yeah, but never like this.
Never back to back like this, which is like a bit weird, right? Like, people think that it means that a Switch success is going to get announced soon. I don't think it's that. But I do think it is like a very ominous like clearing of the decks from Nintendo, where like they have all this stuff that like they want to be showcased, but from this point onwards, there's a lot that Nintendo has going on that it needs to promote for itself. So get this stuff out now.
I guess because Nintendo doesn't have any more big first-party games to get out the door, right? Like, there's obviously Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, but like they haven't got like they haven't had a Mario game since 2017. Oh, that's not true. They had Wonder last year. Nothing in the same throes as like Tears of the Kingdom or Mario Odyssey, or even a Mario Kart or anything like that. So really showcasing a lot of these indies and third-party partners at this point, when they haven't got a massive release outside of Echoes of Wisdom, which as much as I want that game to be a success, like I do think it will be a slightly more niche audience than what like a typical Zelda fan or Nintendo fan.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But then they've also got like Super Mario Party Jamboree, which is gonna like knock the fucking socks off the holiday sales.
Yeah. Well, again, one would hope the other Mario parties like.
The first one did really well. The second one, not so much.
Yeah,
which is so strange because like the second one is so much better. Like I don't know. I think the people just don't care. I don't think they just like see a Mario Party and they're like, oh, I guess I'll grab that.
I think like the Super Mario, whichever one came first, that was sort of that
Super Mario Party.
Was that in the pandemic?
No, that was
that
like 2018, 2019.
Oh, okay. I just wondered if like the pandemic helped with that one as well. But
yeah. I mean,
never mind.
I don't know. I think Jamboree is probably going to be quite popular. I don't know.
I hope so. I'm
the heights
definitely up for it. Like, that's great.
I think the first two on Switch were very much just like games we've seen before. Obviously, mini games are different, but the core was pretty much the same. Whereas this one, there's umpteen thousand more characters to play as. There's more whole new modes to play through. So, I think in terms of the game, this one's going to give a lot.
I don't know if I'm misremembering. There seems to be a ton more boards in this one as well. Is that, am I misremembering or no?
I think there is, but only because like they're like in separate game modes, right? Like I think there's like specific boards for the 20-player mode.
Yeah. Cool.
I also think that helps with the Mario Party game as well. Like there've been so many releases where like we've got like 1,000 mini games and all this kind of stuff, but like then they've got 4 boards. It's like, well, it's actually kind of the boards that really sort of bring the people in because that's what offers a lot of the variety. And
the fact that they're not doing, and I hate season passes. I despise anyone who does it. But the fact they're not doing a season pass for Mario Party boards, like every 3 months you get a new board and 50 new mini games. Like,
it should just be like Mario Kart was with the subscription.
I think Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has just ruined me because now I've seen like what they can do with an Ultimate. Just like Ultimate everything, please. Mario Kart Ultimate, Mario Party Ultimate. Just do it. Every board, every mini game. That'd just be wild.
Could you imagine a Sonic board? Just like in Green Hill Zone or something? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, we've still got Metroid Prime 4 to go. And like that is, from a development standpoint, quite a large game. Whether or not it'll actually sell well is another story.
But that's next year, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also,
and obviously we've got
Switch 2. Realistically.
I mean,
it'll be a cross-gen title.
Historically, Nintendo have also hosted a Direct in September. They usually do one about a week before TGS.
Yeah.
So
well, getting recording this just in time to be announced tomorrow.
No, thankfully TGS is the 26th of September. So if they do it the week before TGS, it would be like the 19th or 20th when we record that following weekend. So we might actually.
So wait, are you suggesting that Nintendo might be announcing a Switch around the same time a new iPhone gets announced? Good lord.
I mean, also there's the PS5 Pro that is 100% real and getting announced soon. So
no one is going to buy the PS. You have to get a whole second mortgage to get a PS5 Pro at this point, dude.
Oh man,
let's not get
really
into that.
Intrigued about how much that's going to cost. It's going to be wild.
It's going to be $1,000 in Australia.
God.
Easy.
Yeah,
easy.
At least 1,000, I reckon, if not slightly
easy.
more.
Oh, and it's just what I don't know. Like the thing is, like the current PS5. Okay, let's just go on a tangent. Let's talk about the PS5.
Okay.
I was just
the
thinking
current
time-wise.
Rejig my share.
A little bit.
Let's go.
Yeah. The current PS5, like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like sufficiently powerful for what developers want to do. The problem is that like every developer on the planet is like, yeah, let's throw ray tracing in, and like that's a bad idea. It doesn't add enough to the game to like,
I feel like that might be a contractual thing.
I feel like, okay, so I think the issue, like I like, obviously, surprise, I like ray tracing. But I think the problem is it has to be done tastefully. And I think a lot of the games that are currently coming out with ray tracing run on Unreal 5. And Unreal 5 on consoles it just gets smashed. The CPU performance is nowhere near enough to run it properly, especially if they're running software Lumen, which a lot seem to do. So I think the Pro will excel from that, but even then I've heard the Pro isn't getting that much of an upgraded CPU. It's going to be a lot to do with the GPU. So it's going to be it's going to be really interesting. But like you see, game like the Spider-Man games, right? They have ray tracing in performance and a quality mode, and they look and run fantastically well. But as soon as the Unreal Engine 5 stuff is just brutal. It just destroys game performance.
I don't know. The thing for me, right, is that like, if I just see like a screenshot, like not a RTX on, RTX off comparison thing, if I just see a screenshot or just like some gameplay footage, 0 times out of 100, I will guess correctly whether or not that has ray tracing. It doesn't, like, the average person, which is like, you know, me, like, it doesn't make a difference. Agree. Like, nobody gives a shit about ray tracing. So like, they can come out with this console that has like, you know, hardware-based ray tracing and you know, a 100% more powerful GPU, and that, like, it's not going to make a difference to the average person. Like, who's going to buy that? Nobody cares.
I think the issue I have is that I would take performance over that quality anytime. And so many times they don't give you an option to have RT on or off. They don't have pre-baked solutions in like ready to go. So you either have to use ray tracing and run awful, or nothing. And that was what was so strange about the whole Star Wars Jedi Survivor situation, because on consoles they launched with RT only, but on PC they had both. But they just didn't give you the option on console. You just had to run RT at a lower performance. Eventually they patched it in now, which is great.
I mean, I've got news for you, Michael. If you want to play Jedi Survivor on console with bad performance, it's coming to Xbox One in a few weeks.
I mean, you can also just play the current versions because they're also still in bad performance. So it doesn't really matter.
No, the thing is, right, like, the people who care the most about ray tracing are also the people that care the most about high frame rates. And like, that's the whole thing for me, right? Is that like, nobody is going to sacrifice.
They're at odds with each other, right?
Yeah, very much so. Like, you can't have the high frame rates and the ray tracing. Like, in current hardware, it's just not doable. So like, people are going to pick performance most of the time, unless they've got like, you know, $5,000 to spend on a 4090, which
they didn't get stuff like Black Myth Wukong, right? Which has all those features which you can't really disable, and just the visual quality is just, at least on console, it degrades so badly. There's so many like visual artifacting, and they're running like every trick in the book. Like the fact that it default uses frame generation on console and not even good frame generation, it's wild. And that, again, that's a Unreal Engine 5 like cursed game. It just doesn't have the performance on console to do it properly.
And like the kind of like weird ironic thing is, like, from what we know about what the Switch success is going to be like, it will have the hardware to do hardware-based ray tracing. So it will probably do ray tracing better than the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Like, it's just because of the way that the hardware is.
PlayStation and Xbox are using AMD chips, and I've personally never liked AMD graphics. Their chips just never work for me. They never seem to work the way they should, their frame generation stuff is not. They just released a new update the other day, apparently fixing a whole bunch of stuff, but it's like
So Black Myth uses FSR2 still for FSR2 frame generation. I think it does. And the new FSR 3.1 frame gen is considerably better. But the whole thing, like, so AMD like video card performance is fine if you're doing raster performance and non-RT stuff. But as soon as you get into the RT realm, Nvidia just has that shit on lock. Like, you cannot compete like at all. Like, first of all, the exclusive RT technologies that they have, plus their RT performance on their cores, is just considerably better. And the DLSS 3.5, like ray reconstruction, frame generation, like all that stuff, when you turn that on with like RT, it looks incredible. That's where you get the extra performance from. And I guess we'll see. I'm pretty sure they mentioned that with PS5 Pro, Sony will have their own exclusive frame gen option that they've developed themselves. So I guess we'll see what that is like. Maybe.
But I mean, like, there's going to be like 3 million people will buy it, and then that'll be that. Because the exact same thing happened with the PS4 Pro, right? Like there
Yeah, I
was
think
none.
The interesting
That
thing
is
with
the
PS4
console.
Pro, and I think the guys at Digital Foundry mentioned this, is that like PS4 Pro came out at a time where you can market it well, right? Oh, you're upgrading to a 4K TV, come get this new 4K console. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that made total sense. But this doesn't really have that.
Yeah.
And also, the base PS4's price didn't increase.
Yes,
worldwide
exactly.
either.
If
Yeah.
any, yeah, the base PS4 price went down and the Pro took over pretty much the old price point, which is, yeah, great point.
There's
And
two
that's
things.
not going to happen with PS5.
No.
There's two things I want with this. One is that the games don't get more expensive, because when we got PS5, they're like, oh, the games are now $125 a pop. It's like, okay, cool. If the PS5 Pro comes out and they're now like $150 a game, that's a definite no for me. But two is that I don't want the PS5 Pro. I want developers to fucking make games that work on the hardware they already have. We saw it with Xbox 360. They were like, oh, this is a full HD console. Every game ran at 720p or lower. We saw it with Xbox One and PS4. Oh, we're going to do 4K. No, it's not. It's not. It's upscaled. It's not 4K. It's not native 4K. Every time they get access to hardware, they deliberately market these key terms, and then every game developer never uses them correctly, and then they get a new hardware and they start the cycle all over again.
You know, the PS5 Pro can do 8K. Not anymore. They removed it from the box, thankfully.
They did remove 8K from the box, which is very funny.
I think the problem with this problem, quote unquote, with this generation is that at the moment, technology, like the development technology side of things, is outpacing hardware. Like when the PS5 and the Xbox Series X came out, like they were already, and obviously this is the way consoles work in general, but like they're already old tech. But like the software side of stuff was advancing so fast past that, that they just can't keep up. You can't have these 8-year console cycles anymore because the hardware is just too old.
Or at the very least, the hardware is just more expensive to manufacture at this point.
Yeah.
And therefore, software is so much faster and more efficient to develop for, and because it's, you know, whatever. But like when it comes to the hardware itself, it's much more sophisticated. Plus, there's that whole conflict between Taiwan, China, and the US as well, which isn't helping, which makes chips so much harder to manufacture. So it's just a perfect storm of just this unbalanced sort of non-equilibrium between software and hardware just worldwide at the moment.
The other thing that like that Sony and Microsoft in particular are going to have to contend with very soon is like the massive advances in ARM efficiency over the past like 5 years. Like ARM chips are like just getting absurd.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say ARM instead of ARM. I just want to point that out.
ARM.
I know it's ARM, but like everyone says ARM.
That's that Nintendo game, right?
But yeah, like Nintendo's in a really good position with that because like they got in with Nvidia with the Tegra stuff, and you know they're working on ARM, and like it really seems like that's like kind of what the future of computing is going to be. So like how do you move forward when like ARM, I guess, is you know clearly the way forward. Like x86 is it's not dying, but like you know it's outdated, right? It has to support
It has a limitation.
instruction sets from you know 50 years ago, and unfortunately that means that like you know a slimmer architecture like ARM is like that does get updated and does get dependencies removed and does become more efficient. Like it does mean that you know you kind of have to start making trade-offs, and you don't have to do that with ARM. So yeah, it's an interesting place for the industry to be in, where like conceivably in 2 generations time Nintendo could be by far the powerhouse just because they've stuck with ARM for so long. Like we could be seeing like you know 8K 300 frames a second on a fucking handheld, and you know the PS12 or whatever will not be anywhere close to it. We do need to move on. Yes. So, yeah. All right, let's power through them. We've got half an hour, so let's fucking get to it.
my
There's a
God.
new Zelda, The Legend of Zelda Echoes Wisdom trailer that revealed the Steel World and Sword Fighter form. So Steel World is kind of a bit, I don't know how to explain it. I guess it's like a little bit like Breath of the Wild's Trials, but not. It's kind of a unique thing. It's like mini dungeons, I guess. Where you can hop into like the underworld and do stuff like that. It reminds me of Pokemon Platinum's Distortion World. But there's also a sword fighter form where Zelda can basically turn into Link and start like slashing people and all of that stuff.
You mean, what if Link was a girl? It's real?
Exactly. Yeah, and also Dampire's back, which is fun. He's a fun guy, Gravekeeper dude. And he can make like fucking wind up toys for Zelda to throw at enemies and yeah, seems quite fun. Super keen for this. I don't know how I feel about the sword thing, but I'm glad it's not like a permanent thing. Like you can't just always just be in sword mode and then it's a regular Zelda game. Because
I'm a little bit torn by it because I'm sort of like, obviously we want Zelda to be her own thing, but at the same time, just like the implication that, you know, Zelda needs to be possessed to use a sword is just.
Well, I think the interesting thing is like lore-wise, it seems like she like just finds a random sword, right, and then makes an echo of it, and then Link's spirit is in that sword because it's his sword. Which I think is like interesting kind of lore-wise because like swords have generally, throughout the Zelda series, have generally had some kind of like embodiment to them. Like we saw with, you know, the Skyward
Fee.
Sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fee.
Triggering me now.
And then like the Four Sword does have like, you know, embodiments of Link that live within it. So I think like this is an interesting idea, lore-wise. In terms of like actual gameplay, it's like, I don't know, does Zelda need to wield a sword?
With the way they're building the game out, you probably don't need to use the sword mode if you don't want to. Same way you can use, you know, 3 beds in a row to climb up a cliff instead of, you know, trying to find a way around. So
I don't know. The way I saw it from the trailer, it sort of made it seem like there will be sections you sort of require to use a sword, like to get through. But
I haven't
guess
watched
we'll
the
see.
trailer because I'm at the point now with Nintendo. They do this all the time. They a month out from a game's release, they just start spoilering the whole thing themselves, like clips and images and everything. So I'm not watching it just because I'm like, I don't want to know what all this is. I want to, you know, enjoy the game when I play it myself. So
Also, it came out just as we were traveling to Nintendo Live, which probably didn't help. But yeah, I mean, I think it looks good, and I'm very keen to play it. I think having the sword be one of many tools in Zelda's toolbox rather than like, you know, the main thing is good. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how required it is. And is it going to be like a Breath of the Wild situation where like there'll be some things where you have to use it, or is there always going to be like an alternative solution, which is like, I guess, more akin to like how Tears of the Kingdom approaches things. I don't know, we'll see. But I mean, like, there's going to be traditional dungeons presumably, so I would assume that there's probably going to be a sword fighter dungeon, because I guess it's just kind of acting like the dungeon items that you used to get, like the hookshot or whatever. So yeah. Angelo, thoughts on sword fighter Zelda?
I want it. Give it to me. Let's go.
I'm still also annoyed they've not announced an amiibo for Zelda in that style.
Totally.
They've announced a reprint of the Link one. It's like, well, fantastic, except he's not well, apart from the opening segment, he's not playable in the game. So why do we need his amiibo again?
It's because Zelda's a girl, Luke. We don't need any more of that woke propaganda.
Oh, goodness me.
Honestly, I do not believe that at all. I'm just being
Of course.
a total.
I'm just like, wait a minute, I need to make sure that everyone knows I'm not a bigoted piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about first Nintendo Live and what they're doing, because they kind of messed up. And then let's just talk about Nintendo Live in general. So yeah, Nintendo Live took place in Sydney last weekend. Was it really that?
Last weekend.
Jeez. It feels like so long ago. But yeah, the first day of Nintendo Live, which is the one that Luke and I went to, had very, very long lines for the My Nintendo store, which had exclusive merch and all sorts of fun stuff. Yep, and Luke is wearing one of the hoodies now. There were 4 lines that were required to buy things, so you had to get in. It was time return, the shop entry, item collection. It was a complicated process. But Nintendo is adding, I think, all of the stock. Most of it.
Their word literally says that they're working to make every item available. Doesn't confirm every item will be available, but working to.
Yeah.
So.
So that people can buy it online, even if you didn't attend the show. But there will be item limits that apply, as they did at the show. So you can't just buy like 40 hoodies and then like start selling them online for $300 each.
I mean, that'll happen. We'll just be in different mechanisms.
It'll happen for sure. But yeah, I think part of the issue is as well, there were people who were like in line when the last call for like booking a slot for shopping happened, right? Like there were people who still weren't even in the door at the time. Because people weren't leaving as quickly as Nintendo had expected people to leave. So people who got in at like the 10 a.m. session were like still hanging around at 3 p.m., which is understandable, but like not something that Nintendo predicted, I guess.
I mean, who could have predicted that people would hang around for 4 hours after they opened the event when they scheduled the big panel 4 hours after they started the event?
Yeah. But yeah, we'll talk about Nintendo Live in general because Luke and I did both go to that. First of all, do either of you plan on buying any of the merch?
I mean, I'll see what's available, but like the hoodie is probably the one that interests me because I just like hoodies in general. So it's great that I get to buy one without any of the expenses of going to Sydney, staying somewhere, going to the event. That's great.
But the thing the store had is there's basically 2 sides to it. One was all the standard games, Joy-Con consoles. Like, who the hell is going to Nintendo Live to buy a Switch console? Like, if it was like old stock of like the Splatoon one or the Pikachu Eevee combo from like 4 years ago, like that I would understand if they had like old stock they brought in. But it was just like the same stuff you could buy at your local JB. So that wasn't anything special. But everything else outside of the hardware, we'll call it, but so the plushies, the t-shirts, the hoodie, obviously the Nintendo Live branded stuff, all of that was exclusive. So none of the plushies that they were selling there can be bought on the Nintendo store here. So if you wanted the Pikmin plush or the Mario plush, that was the only time. It's the first time they've ever been available in Australia by Nintendo. So that's probably why people went a bit nuts for it, because you couldn't get that anywhere else. So if that stuff makes it online on the website, I think people will be very happy. Because I know a few people went nuts for the Pikmin plush.
Yeah, they're very cute. But yeah, so Luke and I went to Nintendo Live in Sydney last weekend. It was a lot of fun. So Brad, who was also somebody who writes for Vookcast, was also there. And yeah, we had an absolute blast. It was just like a huge hall kitted out with a whole bunch of Nintendo shit. So there was, a Kirby section, Animal Crossing, Splatoon, just all sorts of wonderful, wonderful stuff. There were like meet and greets, like you could get a picture with Pikachu or Peach or the Mario Brothers, which was a lot of fun. There was a poor person in a very tiny Kirby costume, which just looked like the worst.
But there was somebody in there?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just a large plushie.
No, there was a person that wiggled around. It was the whole thing.
Oh my god.
The only one that was slightly worse was the Isabelle one, because the Isabelle one had legs, but the legs were only about that long from the bottom of the suit. So the person was doing this shuffle back to the little hidey hole. So,
oh my lord.
Yeah. But as Luke has written here, there was no food or drink in the venue, so you couldn't get a snack or whatever, which is a bit of a bummer.
and if you left the venue to go get something to eat, let's say medically, or you needed food for some medications or something, was no guarantee you'd be allowed back in.
Yeah,
which made
That's
it even worse.
wild.
there were some people that did leave and were able to come back in for reasons like that. But yeah, it was basically if you're in, you're in, and once you leave, you're out. Because again, they had so many people booked into this thing that people were not leaving anywhere near as fast as what was expected.
Reports from the Sunday said everything was a lot better. Like they had no issues and all that, but they still didn't have food. There was still no seats. Like there were people still just hanging around. But apparently it was a lot better overall than the Saturday was. But
yeah,
we can only report on the day we were there.
Yeah. But yeah, despite all of those issues, and there were quite a lot of issues, I didn't see a single person there who was anywhere close to a frown, right? Like everybody was excited to be there, even the people who had been waiting in line for an hour. And there was a fantastic Q&A panel with Charles Martinet, which was lovely. He's such a cool dude, and you can actually watch that without having gone to that.
Both of them are online on Nintendo Australia's YouTube channel.
Yeah. And yeah, I also got a photo with Charles Martinet, which was fun. He was just a super, super chill dude. But yeah, I think if something like this happened again in the future, I probably wouldn't bother going to it. It was a nice thing to go to once and enjoy. Like if it was, I don't know, if it was in Melbourne, right? Like maybe, because I have a lot of friends in Melbourne, I would go there. But like if it was like in Perth or Brisbane or Adelaide, sorry, Angelo, I would not travel to that.
I don't even know if I would go if it was in Perth. Like
I wouldn't go if it was in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Look, the fact that it was free, like if you had to buy a ticket and it was in your city, you'd be should I, shouldn't I? But if it's free, then it doesn't hurt to apply to see how you go.
It's just like this whole like all the queuing issue stuff and like the thousands more people being there and waiting. That's the stuff that drives me insane about conventions. Like all of that stuff. So like it just no thank you at all.
Dude, I'm like in my mid-30s. Death is a mere moment away. I have no time to wait in lines anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
So I
here first, guys. Angelo cuts in line every moment he gets.
I will admit I didn't play a single thing at Nintendo Live, but it's like at the same time there was nothing that I didn't already own on my Switch, so there was no reason for me to play anything.
That's the other thing, right? Yeah, like if it's just games you can literally just go out to the store and buy right now and not have to wait in line to get a free.
They were selling all those games in their store there, so you didn't even have to leave the venue. You could have just gone and bought them and played them on your Switch standing next to the booth.
Yeah.
But as I said, like I don't know, my perception on this is skewed because I didn't have to wait in any lines. I was given a press pass by Nintendo, but I did pay for my own flights and hotels, etc. So I just got to like walk in through the back door, which very highly recommend if anybody is a journalist. Just walk in through the back door. But yeah, there was like a lot of queuing. Like when I went to do the photo with Charles Martinet, like I was standing in that line for 40 minutes or so, which it's just too long to be standing in line. Absolutely not worth it. I mean, it was worth like doing it, but yeah.
They need like 3 matinees, so you can just duck into a booth.
Yeah. I mean, I think
did either of you bring your 3DS and do some street passes?
I did not.
I did bring my 3DS. And then I forgot to actually turn it on before going into the hall. And I got back home and I was like, man. I wonder if I've got any street passes. And I like flip up my 3DS and it's just like not on. And I was like, cool.
Anytime someone brings up Street Pass, I'm just immediately sad.
Yeah.
I love Street Pass like so much. It's such a cool feature.
I did see like a lot of people standing in lines and stuff with their 3DSs out. So I'm sure people got plenty of Street Passes. There was a guy with like a Game Boy. There was a guy with like an original Game Boy who I saw like midway through standing in a really long line, like swap out the double A's for, which was a very fun sight. But yeah, it was, yeah. I mean, I think the main, like, the big thing about this is that like, this is Nintendo taking Australia seriously as a market, which is not something that has historically always been true. And I think that that's, important going forward, and it's a good sign for Nintendo as in general in Australia, because we've kind of always gotten the short end of the stick. But we've got a merch store now, we've got a Pokemon Center store, we've got a web store that actually works, which should not have been a thing, given that like every other region had that in the early 3DS era. But yeah, we're actually like, Nintendo is doing things for Australia, which is good.
So I mean, I actually spoke with one of the guys from Japan. So Nintendo Australia obviously out in force there. Nintendo Japan had a lot of folks out there as well, but even Nintendo of America had folks there. Like this wasn't like just some rinky-dink thing Nintendo of Australia did on their own. Like Nintendo as a global company were working on this. Why are you
Sorry,
giggling?
Angelo is just fucking.
Just fucking
edit
sabotaging the podcast at every opportunity.
I'll post it in the books channel, Vookcast channel. Sorry. So
God.
make sure you jump onto the books Discord, guys.
Are you posting that now? Because you should post that now, and then they won't get any context until the episode comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll get it in a week.
Yeah.
So while
exactly.
Angelo's doing that, I'll continue what I was saying. I can't look at it because I'm not in the Discord. But my point is, I spoke with one of the guys from Japan, and he said that a lot of the stuff they had in the show was actually custom made for it.
God.
So this wasn't like, they just printed up stuff at a local printer and called it a day. Like, we saw the Link statue that was there, which we'd seen a couple of years ago. I think at Gamescom, I did the rounds at Nintendo Live in Tokyo in 2022. We had the Zelda one there. There was a wall of Pokemon, like the history of Pokemon games, like the mainline series. They had like the actual boxes, and they had like the map of the region. It was really cool.
Yeah.
There was a giant
And
Kirby
they had the
hanging.
Australian versions, it seems, which is nice.
Yeah, which is really
Yeah.
cool. But they also had like a giant Kirby hanging from the ceiling above the Kirby booth. That booth
I was gonna say,
more
I want
statues
that
than
so
anything.
badly. It looks so cool. It's happened in my apartment. It's probably the size of my apartment.
What's really funny is that Kirby booth had more statues of Kirby than it did actual stations to play Kirby games. Because
Yeah.
there was like one for Sword Fighter Kirby, Mallet Kirby, Car Kirby. So yeah, there's a lot of Kirbys around there. So Nintendo did do well, and again, like as Ollie said, like there was a lot of times when you just looked around, you saw people like with their families smiling. Like, I saw a family there, and the oldest son was dressed as Mario, the youngest son was dressed as Luigi, and the baby was dressed as Peach. Right, and it's such an adorable thing. But I will say, and Ollie will get a kick out of this because he was there at the end. Brad and I were talking, waiting for Ollie to walk in, and we were standing at the edge of the big Nintendo sign because there was nothing there to do there, right? It was a dead space, and we were standing there, and all of a sudden we got swamped by people who had left the Mario Kart tournament. They'd come around the side, and they just sort of stayed there. So we moved away because as we saw Ollie, we moved over to where he was, and the line just kept running around. This line went all the way from, if you look at the map, went from like the bottom right corner of the stage, or the bottom left corner of the stage area, all the way around the whole floor back in, and that was for people to get a ticket for the store. And I made the comment that I should walk the line to record it, to see how long it is. People do that whole walk the line and record it. I was thinking about doing that, and then they made the announcement they're moving that line out of the main space into the entry hall because it was so big. It was just like a surreal moment to see like a whole crowd of people rush to try and be first in that line to get a ticket for the store. So
yeah, definitely way too many people. I think they probably could have cut the numbers of people that were given tickets to that first day by 30%, I guess. I think that would have been a good idea. But yeah, it was a good experience overall. Also, when I was in Sydney, I tried Cinnabon for the first time. How the fuck are Americans just not constantly talking about Cinnabon? That was the shit.
because they have cinnamon everything over there already, so it doesn't stand out.
I mean, that's fair. But man, Cinnabon. I just got like a nice, warm, like big Cinnabon, and it was just the most phenomenal thing I've ever tasted. Anyway,
Ollie
if you're
goes
ever
to
in
Sydney and eats
check that
Cinnabon. I go to Sydney and play a whole bunch of games,
Yeah.
which there are
Yeah,
previews on
Cinnabon.
all of them on the site. So Dragon Quest, Life is Strange, Little Nightmares, and Fantasian. So
Just very
Sign
quickly,
up,
Ollie,
sign up.
did you meet a listener or something
Oh yeah,
There's
that is a good point. So I wanted to give a special shout out to Zach, his name is, who was a listener who also follows me on Twitter. And he came up to me and said that he listens to every single episode and is a big fan of the show. So yeah, thank you for listening, Zach. And this is your special shout out in here because
I'm so glad you said on Twitter at the end of that. Because if you said Zach follows me, I'd be like, okay, I'll follow you on Twitter.
Well, I mean, yeah, I posted a selfie on the show floor and I was like, hey, this is what I look like. Come see me. And then yeah, he did. So
clearly he doesn't watch the video version because nobody approached me.
No. I mean, maybe he does and just like didn't need that. But yeah, it was really lovely to get feedback in person. Yeah.
Thanks to everyone who listens to the show, and my sincerest apologies.
Very true.
Also, sorry because I know people complained about it in the last episode. Sorry that there was so many loud coin noises because we put those in the audio version whenever we swear, and we swore a lot in the last episode. So, whoops.
To be fair, though, every time we swear, we get paid.
But
every time we swear, we get paid by Russian bots. So that's why there's a sound.
Unfortunately, we then spend all that money licensing the coin sound from Nintendo, so
fighting off lawsuits.
Alrighty, we'll quickly go over the games we're playing. We have time. So I have been playing more. We have time. It's fine. It's fine. I have like 12 minutes, but it'll be okay. So I've been playing Backer. Still getting through that. Still really enjoying it. Also the Castlevania Dominus collection, which I am enjoying the shit out of. It's kind of just wild how much I played like when I was a teenager that like it's just coming rushing back to me now. So, yeah, it's really, really good. I'm also playing something else that I don't know if I can talk about because the developers sent me a key for it and it doesn't come out for like a month, but they didn't tell me that when I could talk about it or if I could talk about it. So
mention it to us, and then I'll just mute the audio so nobody else knows.
It's Reignatus, the game from.
Oh yeah.
They didn't give me a date on when I can talk about it or when the embargo is or anything like that, so I don't know if I'm allowed to. So, I'm sure they won't mind if I say that I'm playing it. So I'm playing that, and it's good. Yeah, Michael, hey.
Continuing to play Hell Let Loose as always. I played yesterday. Played a lot of games with one of my friends, Kai, and they were all awful. It was an awful experience. I don't know why I keep playing. But yeah, it was a really bad night last night. But I'm also playing Astrobot. I started playing that during the day yesterday, and that game fucking slaps. It is so good. It is visually beautiful. The gameplay is awesome. Yeah, it's exactly what I wanted. I'm glad that they took everyone's opinion to heart when they played Astro's Playroom. It was like, what if this was like a full game? And they're like, okay.
Luke, quickly tell us what you've
well, the ones that I can talk about, play through Star Wars Outlaws for review, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 for review, Astrobot for review, and Castlevania Dominus Collection for review, and all are good. Out of all of them, Star Wars and Astrobot are my two favorites. So.
Yeah.
And I said in my review, Astrobot is the most Nintendo game ever made, not by Nintendo.
Yeah. I mean, Vook said in the Slack that, like, you know, he's really happy that PlayStation players can finally play a Mario game, so yeah. Angelo, what have you been playing?
So I've been playing Astrobot, love it. Playing Star Wars Outlaws, like it. Playing Buckaroo. Quite early in that game, like it, probably gonna love it. But then also I went to the Royal Adelaide show last week, and my partner and I just spent the entire day just watching the dog trials, the agility trials, and having a great time. It was so much fun. We just sat there and just watched dogs all day. It was great fun. But then it really got me in the mood to play Nintendogs. And I was like, after a discussion, we were talking about, getting Nintendogs as a free-to-play game on phone, and I was like, And then I remembered that I can be a big old bad boy and just get Nintendogs on my phone anyways through Delta. So I just did that, and then I completely forgot that in order to start playing the game, you have to do a whole bunch of stupid voice commands and stuff. So I'm sitting there in this loud ass shed trying to yell, or quietly say, but also quite loudly say, sit, roll over, and it just wouldn't take my voice. It was very, very frustrating, but I still had a great time.
I can't imagine anyone at the show would have been grateful for you yelling out, sit! shit in the middle of a dog show where they're trying to do agility.
Yeah, I had a dickhead teenager behind me yelling "roll over" to try and throw me off, and I just glared at him, and then he walked away. So good to see I still have that power over teenagers.
Alrighty. Yeah, I also played Star Wars Outlaws for review and enjoyed it, but yeah. Let's move on to Nintendo's 20 questions. We have 9 minutes, so we have to do every 27 seconds you need to ask a question. Let's go.
Was this game made in the 2000s?
I knew it. I was like, I'm just gonna let Angelo have it.
I needed to get in there.
No, it was not made in the 2000s.
Okay,
Was
this
it made
game
in the 90s?
It was not made in the 90s.
Okay, so it's either late 80s or it's 2010s. So, Angelo, when you said 2000s, did you mean all of 2000s or you meant like the first decade?
I meant the decade
Okay.
of the 2000s. Yeah.
That's the problem, right? Is that like now you've got like either 80s or
No,
2010s
you
and
guys
later.
know what
That's
I
why you need to do
mean.
before or
It's-
after.
Don't be
It's
like that.
It's definitely okay. So was this game made in the 20? Oh no, after 2010s. You know what I mean? What?
Was this game released on or after
Don't
January
judge
1st,
me.
2010?
Oh.
Yeah, alright. That was a lot of questions. I was just gonna say yeah, it was made in 2010s.
Okay.
All right, that's recent-ish.
Was this game released for a Nintendo home console?
Sure.
Wait. So, just to clarify, was this game made in the 2010s or was it made 2010 and after?
It was made in the 2010s. I'm just giving that to
Okay,
you
cool,
because
cool.
we have a time crunch, and also
Yep.
that whole line of questioning was a hot mess.
Okay, cool.
Okay, home console, and there was a pause thinking about it. So, was this game primarily released on a handheld console?
Such a difficult question. Yeah, sure, I guess.
So it's probably Switch then.
Oh, okay, so Switch. Yeah, okay, my brain just okay. That was a waste of a question. I didn't even like put together the Switch existed.
Unless it's one of those games that released on like the 3DS and then got like a home console port later. Was this game
was-
published by Nintendo?
Yeah.
This game was not published by Nintendo.
Was it developed in Japan?
It was not developed in Japan.
Was it developed in North America?
It was not developed in North America.
A European handheld game. Or an Australian one, I should say.
But now there's a
Right.
time crunch. I can't think of any questions.
Does this game feature multiplayer?
This game does not feature multiplayer.
Is this a licensed game?
It's not a licensed game.
Is the developer of this game well known?
I would say the developer of this game is well known.
So it's not like Joe's Chicken Shack from Poland or something.
Wow.
That would be an incredible.
My
No
go-to
disrespect
answer for
to
this.
Joe's Chicken Shack in Poland.
Is this game gonna be like Hollow Knight or something?
Was this game made in Australia?
This game was made in Australia.
Oh, okay. That narrows it down to our.
Well, it definitely
one
wasn't
game
Joe's
studio
Chicken
we have
Shack in
here.
Poland, then. Does this game? Sorry, is this game part of a series?
This game is not part of a series.
Yet.
That's what I was just thinking.
Is this game a platformer?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a platformer.
I was thinking Untitled Goose Game for a second there, but if it's a platformer.
It's got multiplayer, man.
Wait, it has multiplayer?
Untitled Goose Game, yeah, you can play co-op with.
Oh,
Two goose.
sorry.
No.
You're
Yeah,
right.
sorry. I thought you meant this game had multiplayer,
Yeah.
and I was
No,
like,
no.
did you say no?
Yeah.
Does
how
this
many
game feature
questions
a
are we
lot of? We've got 5 questions and a guess.
Okay, cool.
Oh wow, we've burned through them.
Does
we've
this
got
game
4 minutes.
feature any bugs?
Game does feature bugs.
Like, wait, like programming bugs or like bugs the animal?
Bugs the animal is what I was thinking. So
Find out.
Okay.
Oh,
Could be
no.
either. If it was programming bugs, that would be literally every game ever made. So
True. You have an idea, obviously, Ollie. If you ask Luke, if you ask that question,
I'm thinking it has to be Hollow Knight. Because
Was
it's
this game
technically
made
only
in Adelaide?
Yeah.
Was this game made in Adelaide?
the game was made in Adelaide.
Oh, there we go. So it's Hollow Knight.
Oh, hang on, let's just make sure that Mighty Kingdom.
the one game made in Adelaide. Hold on.
Yep. The one game that's means that it's worth anything at the moment. Yeah, it's made in Adelaide. No, that's not true. Mighty Kingdom.
Mighty
It's also
Kingdom's in
Mighty
Adelaide, and they've made a few Switch games. So,
Yeah, my bad.
Does this game have a sequel that definitely does not exist and isn't real?
Yes, this game has a sequel that does not exist.
it's got to be Hollow Knight then.
Is it Hollow Knight?
Alrighty. No, of course it is. Yes, it's Hollow Knight. So yeah, first released on PC in February 2017, and then on Switch in June 2018. Developed in my hometown of Adelaide. It is Hollow Knight. Yeah. I just
Can
thought
we
a
just
nice,
admit
easy
that
one.
We just smashed through that in 6 minutes. I think that's like the fastest time we've ever done Nintendo 20 questions.
Yeah. But yeah, now
That's
we know that
nice.
we can get 20 questions out in 6 minutes, so that's like
That's what I was
time
about to say.
we
Now we
can-
need to have someone have something after the podcast every time, just to make us go through it really fast.
Angelo had that a
Podcasts usually takes
few
us 20
episodes back. He
minutes.
had something on, so we rushed through it at the end to make sure we kept him on. I think we did in 15 minutes that time. So
Yeah.
This is the secret.
who
All
knew a
right, well,
time
that about
restriction
wraps
was
up.
what we needed.
Luke, we don't have time. I need to say the outro. That about wraps up this episode of the Vookcast. Be sure to visit the site www.vooks.net for your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything between. Keep up to date. Follow the site on Twitter at vooks.net, which is all spelled out, or jump on over to our Discord at bit.ly/vooksdiscord. You can find all of our social information and links for all of the stories covered in this episode in the episode notes on whatever platform you're listening to. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you in the next show.